Live from Jefferson County, Colorado, it's Rune or Not, the award-winning game show in which you can quiz yourself or your friends about whether the angular-looking thing that is kind of ancient on your screen is a rune or not. Obviously, this is kind of a joke, but it has a serious purpose because we overuse the word rune for anything that is kind of angular looking, and especially if it is old and Northern European. So let's begin. Number one, rune or not. Ding ding, that's a rune. This is the rune for the consonant sound F. That is its basic meaning. We know it by its name fe in the Old Norwegian and Old Icelandic rune poems, and theoch in the Old English rune poem. And triangulating backwards from those later names, we reconstruct the name fehu in Proto-Germanic for the rune in Elder Futhark. So the name of the rune about 2,000 rather than about 1,000 years ago. Note that the names of the runes in Elder Futhark are nowhere directly attested. They are reconstructed from the names in Old English and Old Norse. The meaning of the name of this rune, which, note, I'm very deliberately saying that rather than the meaning of this rune, is cattle or money, right? The word fe in Old Norse, fehu or feoch, Proto-Germanic or Old English respectively, is related to English fee, which is money, but also German fee, which is cattle. So, or if you look at the Grimm's Law equation, this starts with an F, the Latin cognate would start with a P. Sure enough, you get the Latin root of words like pecunious, right, monetary. All right, so that is a rune. Number two, rune or not. Bam, bam. This is not a rune. This is well, to use a term that was used for it at a time that is old to us, but very far in the future to pre-Christian Vikings, this is a galdra stavr, a magic stave, magic sigil. This one in particular is called Vegvisir. It is not my favorite one, but for reasons unknown to me, my video about this one is the one that people see rather than the one about Agashjolmur. I guess I haven't done any others. But anyway, supposedly this is a, quote, rune that is a Viking compass. It is neither rune nor Viking compass. It is supposed to be a magical sigil for, I guess, helping you find your way. It is the Vegvisir, Vegvisir Wayfinder. But it's not a rune. It's not a letter in an alphabet used to write a historical Germanic language, right? This is not, does not represent a letter. It does not even represent a word. It is a magical sigil. Now, it should also be noted that it's a magical sigil from the early modern period, right? We are closer to the person who put ink to parchment and shared Vegvisir with us in I guess it was the Huld manuscript, than we are to, than that person is to the Viking Age. So while some of these magical sigils could have something to do with pre-Christian Norse practices, I am very skeptical that they do, because magic books, grimoires with very similar magic spells and symbols circulated all around Europe in the late Middle Ages and early modern period. I have a couple more rune or not questions for you after a quick break. Number three, rune or not. Ding ding, yeah, kind of. This is complicated. So this is a, to use, well, I'll just use the Norwegian term that I learned for it, which is Løgnrune, hidden rune, concealed rune. This represents a rune, right? This represents a letter in the Younger Futhark runic alphabet, but it's not that letter. So the runes, the rune letters in each runic alphabet come in a certain order that apparently is somehow important. I mean, you know, A, B, C, D, E is important in the sense that it helps us learn alphabetical order. Maybe it was something similar for them, although we don't know why it's in this weird order relative to other alphabets. But then the runes are arranged in three groups, three ættir, families, or groups of 8 originally, because in the Elder Futhark, of course, 24 breaks into 3 groups of 8. And to make a concealed rune, hidden rune, cryptic rune, encoded rune, however you want to put this in English, what you do is you have one dash or bar or whisker or fin on a fish or something on one side that represents which family it's from, and then 1 to 6 dashes or flippers or whiskers or whatever on the other side, or around the circle or whatever, that represents which one of them it is. So that 1, 3 represents thorn, or 2, 5 represents S. And by the way, sometimes, including on the Røk runestone, which this example is from, you have 1 and 3 switched so that group 3 really means group 1 and group 1 really means group 3. It's semi-simple cryptography, and I guess you could argue about whether this is a rune or not. Maybe it is a meta rune. It's certainly more of a rune than something like Veggvisir, which has no linguistic content. Number 4, rune or not. Ding ding, that's a rune. This is from a somewhat late period in the development of the Younger Futhark runes in Scandinavia, where a minimalistic set was designed called staveless runes. So they don't have the long, tall staff in the center that distinguishes most of the runes of most of the runic alphabets. It's pretty hard to read inscriptions in staveless runes, but they do represent one of the 16 letters in the Younger Futhark alphabet, and thus are kind of like number 3, like kind of meta runes in the sense that, like, this isn't how you would normally write or want to read them, but they certainly represent a particular letter of a particular alphabet, so that is a rune of a certain kind. Number 5, rune or not. Ding ding, this is a rune. It is the R rune, obviously because it looks like an R, written backwards, but it is still the R rune. I have been challenged, which is a nice way of saying insulted, when I have represented runic inscriptions that are written right to left as being written right to left with the runic letters in their reverse orientation. This is actually very common, especially in archaic Elder Futhark inscriptions. Early on, it seems like there actually wasn't a correct way to write, the way that we write left to right, or that Hebrew is written right to left. Instead, we go left to right and then can turn around and go right to left, and then go back left to right, and then go back right to left. That's called bistrophodon. Or we can write the whole thing right to left, or we can write the whole thing left to right. Although, like in many other writing systems that are capable of being written in different directions, like hieroglyphs, the letters are reversed. They face the same way in the direction of writing, right? So if we're writing left to right, R looks like that, and if we're writing right to left, R looks like that. But it is the same thing. It represents the same letter, which represents the same sound. And it's worth noting that we also get a certain amount of flipping vertically too, especially like with the Z rune in Elder Futhark, which is kind of canonically flipped in its incarnation in the younger Futhark alphabet. That doesn't have as much to do with the direction of writing. It just has to do with, random aesthetic changes, apparently. A little bit like how, on some business signs and stuff like that in town, you can see, people writing letters backwards just to be attention-getting or stylistic or cool or make it look pseudo-Russian or something like that. Well, I hope that if you've played this game that you've done reasonably well at it, and that if you didn't, that you perhaps got something out of it going forward. I have a lot of videos about runes on this channel. I also have some reading recommendations that I would make. My number one, actually I have a whole video about this, but my number one, just for anyone casually running through who hasn't stopped this video yet, is Runes: A Handbook by Michael Barnes. It's really the only complete English language introduction to the subject that isn't a bunch of mystical horseshit. So highly recommended, and it is now a less expensive book than it used to be. It's been issued in a paperback or something. It's less expensive than what used to be like $100 hardcover. All right, well, from high up in beautiful Colorado, I'm wishing you all the best.